for tuning in today. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in today for The Divide with Marcus C. Williams. We are here in your ear having the conversations that you need to hear right on WRFZ 106.3 FM. And we are the #1 conservative talk show in all of upstate New York. Let's make it the whole state and the rest of the world. All right, so hit the share button, hit the like button, drop a comment in the conversation so you can be part of the conversation. I'll do my best to pop it up on screen. And always drop an American flag or just a hey, a hi, I'm tuned in, or I love your show down in the comments because it helps the algorithm to get it out to more people. So we thank you all for tuning into this week. We've got a great show for you. And let's be honest, with everything that we've seen happen in about the last week or two on the national and international stage, stuff looks a little hectic, and it's a little hard to sort out exactly what is going on. It's just because there's so much. Today we'll talk about some on the local level, the state level, and some on the international level. But let's start with what everybody has top of mind right now. That's the Iran war, or the Iranian conflict, or the Iranian skirmish, whatever you want to call it, however you cut it. There's people dying and getting blown up over there, and some on the ground, even though they're civilians, are getting shot by the police and the military over there in Iran. Not really cool at all. Not mellow. These people in Iran that have been under the oppression of this government for decades are fed up and they're sick and tired of it. But here on the state side in the United States, our country, the one that I love so dearly, there are many people who are wishing the failure of the United States in this engagement. Now, let me ask you, how does that make any sense? Right? These people are American citizens in the United States of America, you know, and you're wishing that America doesn't win this conflict, doesn't come out victorious in this conflict. What type of a evil, twisted, maniacal person would wish that the U.S. doesn't come out on top? Now, I say this, and I know full well not everybody has to agree with what's going on over there, but I put this to you. The people that are over there running the bombing raids, running the sorties and stuff like that, that are in the Navy, that are in the Air Force, that are in other branches of the military that are operating there right now, or are not operating, depending on who you're asking. But, you know, those are our brethren. Those are our fellow brothers and sisters in arms in the one flag that actually matters, the United States of America. And this is a very important point, because there are actual people marching in the street talking about death to America in our country. There are actual people in our country right now pushing for our failure. Hey, I see you out there. Pop you up there. Drop a comment below, hit the thumbs up, hit the like, drop an American flag, or just say, hey, hi, I'm tuned in. So as we have this conversation, how are there American citizens actively campaigning against the United States of America's success right now inside the United States of America? I had to tell somebody the other day, you know, they're like, oh, well, we were talking about Iran or whatever, or something else. And they were like, oh, well, you are supporting what's going on in Palestine. First of all, nobody was talking about Palestine. I wasn't thinking about Palestine. Palestine wasn't on my mind. It wasn't on my lips, and it didn't come out of my mouth. So what are you talking about? And I said, number one, there's two big issues here with you talking about, oh, Palestine this, Palestine that. First of all, you say that you support them, but you won't go over there and fight. So that's number one. If you truly believe and you are truly so passionate about it, go over there. Show me that you're about that life. Go fight. Go help them then, if that's what you're really about. See, but these people don't want to do that, you know? And I said, number two, I said, look where you are. You're in the United States. You're here. You're in this country talking about tearing down our country and the interests of our country. Now, this is something I want to point out very carefully because it warrants being very methodical with making this point. In the United States of America, we are a country. We are a nation state, right? We operate in the global sphere. Why? Because isolationism is no longer really an option. Because they tried to do away with that in America 100 years ago. You know, like, look at where we are right now. Look at where we are. All of the different countries and the economies, all of those different factors work into all of the decisions that come out of the White House, that come out of the State Department, that come out of the Department of War. All of these things are very, very interwoven between the US and everyone else. So when you sit there and you say, oh, well, I don't want the US to be successful with this or with that, do you even fully know the extent or the impact of what's going on? Or are you just looking at it from one angle? Are you just looking at it from a small angle? Like right now, with this Iranian stuff, our countrymen are over there fighting. And in America, there are those who would wish them harm. How dare they? The absolute ridiculousness of American citizens wishing our armed forces harm. Honestly, those are traitors. Let's call it for what it is. And let's talk about it frankly. See, and that's the issue. A lot of people are very boisterous when they come to their complaints. A lot of people use a lot of inflammatory rhetoric and stuff like that. But these people in our country that are citizens that are pushing and promoting the downfall of our nation are traitors to our country. That's not something that I say lightly. But when you're out there supporting foreign interests, this is a very key point, right? Like foreign interests, like other nations, other countries, other places, and stuff like that, and other peoples that are not American citizens, when you're supporting that, you're actively going against our nation. And then to wish us to fail in our endeavors, like what type of a monster are you, right? Like you don't care how it will impact our whole nation. You don't care if there is a benefit to what's going on in Iran for our nation. And let's dive into that for a second. What we see with Iran right now is largely in relation to China and combating China. I've talked about this before. This is important. It's very, very, very important that we talk about this. China is one of the supreme powers in our globe right now. And far too many people look at them like they're not an issue. They don't have any problems because they have the luxury of being in America or being an American. You're here living it up, living the cushy life in which people are willing to go through the most horrible conditions and possibly get their organs harvested or possibly be raped or sexually assaulted trying to get here to the United States. And you're so comfortable that you would be inside our country as a citizen wishing for the downfall of your own nation? Who's retarded? Who's stupid? Like something's seriously wrong with you. Like you either are completely maliceful and hate our country, in which case you should get out, okay? Or if you continue to choose to talk like that in our nation, you need to face capital punishment because you are a traitor, and traitors need to get handled the way that traitors are supposed to be dealt with. Unfortunately, the United States hasn't done that for a while. And that's why this type of behavior has gotten so out of control. We've got people from Code Pink and I forget the other group, communists for something or socialists of somewhere, are going over to Cuba right now, right? Another area where we're trying to bring Cuba to heel, right? Another country we're trying to bring into the fold, right? We've been going back and forth with China for decades. I mean, it's right here in our backyard, right? People don't understand how Cuba ties in with China. People don't understand how China ties in with Venezuela or any of the other countries down there. They don't understand. So they look at one small aspect of everything that's going on, and they're like, oh, this is what it is. Let me be laser focused. Let me be tunnel visioned. Nothing else really matters. That is a very poor way to look at it. So back to the communist Americans that have traveled over to Cuba, and the Code Pink people and these other rapscallions. I got some other words for them, but it's not nice to say on the radio or the internet. So we got these crazy cuckoos down there going over to the Cuban government to drop off these aid. I'm using air quotes if you're listening online. I mean, on the radio, but they're talking about, oh, we're doing this. We're helping. It's like Ralph Wiggum on The Simpsons. I'm helping. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're making things more problematic. You're giving the government of Cuba, which is an oppressive communist regime, all this extra assistance, which it'll only end up being sold back to the people or going to people that are already in power. And nobody wants to talk about that. And this is where we run into all of these issues, because people get so warped in their own conceptions, in their own minds, that they are so right that nobody else can be right about anything. You know, and one of these big issues is on communism and socialism. Do you know that Cuba is no longer officially a communist nation? That's right. Can you guess what Cuba is now officially? It is a socialist nation. Well, when did that happen, Marcus? Well, that happened when Obama was in office, because the Cubans saw that the term communism was falling out of favor, and more so favorable was the term socialism. So they went through the Constitution in Cuba and they replaced every reference of communism with socialism, because it's the same thing. It's interchangeable. And people don't understand that. They say, oh, well, it's different. It's not. It's not. And these are people who claim to be true communistas, you know, like you don't even know what you're talking about. True socialists, you don't know what you're talking about. Socialism is the movement that ushers in the government form, which is communism. Okay, like this is the concept that people need to understand. But people don't want to understand that, because then they'd actually have to use their heads and not their feelings. You know, and everybody's all about their feelings. Me. What makes me feel good, you know, and emotionality and everything like that. And that is a very, very serious problem. Right now, more than ever, everybody is all tied up in their feelings and their emotions, and they're this and they're that. And that's how they operate. That's the place that they operate from. That's why there is a massive weakening in our society. That's why we see all these soy boys, soft beta men out there. That's why we see all these pompous, masculinic type of females. And when I say masculine type females, I don't mean like females with muscles. I mean females that act like they're whole dudes. That's a problem. And you got to start to ask ourselves, how did we get here? Well, we got here because of, instead of logic, instead of reason, instead of the traditional hierarchy of the home, we've turned that on its head with feminism. Well, but wait, what's feminism got to do with the greater whole of this conversation, Marcus? Well, I'll tell you, feminism is nothing but being used to insert itself in our society, to quash our way of life, to limit strong men, and to allow the slow, steady creep of socialism and communism to pervade our nation under the guise of collectivism. And this is very, 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 very serious. And not enough people understand that. And somebody said, and just endorsed the idea of socialism by electing Mondani in New York City. That's true. That's true, because that's what's happening in our country, because people don't understand what this stuff is really about, and they can't see from outside of their very narrow worldview. It's so problematic. And then I need you to think about this, because this will go into our next comment that somebody just put up here. You look at China, right? China's an enemy of the United States, okay? Somebody will say, it's our biggest competitor. No, they're our enemy. They've declared war on us decades ago. We just haven't been paying them no attention. When they've steadily been chipping away at our society, bit by bit, piece by piece, Lai Shi, that's a Chinese phrase for death of 1,000 cuts. And this is very serious. But they're communists, right? Communists with, what do they call it? Xi Jinping thought, or whatever they're calling it today, or what they used to call it, communism with Maoist characteristics, or you go to Venezuela, they're socialist with, was it Chavez characteristics or whatever the case is. You go to Cuba, they're communists, but with Castro type of thing, and this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with right now. And people don't want to actually have that full conversation. The people who are largely working against the United States on the nation state scale are all socialists, are all communists, and they all have the same goal, which is to deteriorate and disintegrate the United States of America from the inside. That's why they push all of these concepts and thoughts into our society. That's why they've inserted themselves into all of our institutions, all of the colleges, all of the educational facilities, all of the unions. That's why do you think that all these unions and stuff are so closely tied with the communists and the socialists? Have you ever thought about that? It's very important that we actually have that conversation. Somebody said socialism with Chinese characteristics with Xi Jinping thought. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So as we have these conversations, we have to understand that the breadth and scope of what is being done internally inside our nation is all of these nations working together. Now you'll say, Marcus, well, they're not really working together. Well, do they have to directly work together? They all are part of the same ideology. They all know what's good for them. They all know what's going to help push their agenda here in the country. How could you not say that they're working together? They're working all to the same end goal. And whenever they see a like-minded individual, it's like, do you know something? You look like you know something. And they're like, do you know something? You look like you know something. Because they recognize each other. They recognize the behavior. They recognize the ideology. That's why you see things like these No King protests, which they're doing another one this Saturday. You've got these No King protests, and you've got 55 different groups, the Save the Tree Frogs, and, and the people that want to tear up the railroad tracks, and the other people who want green energy, and the people that just all hate Trump. And all of these people are together at one rally for hate, to support the deterioration of our nation, to chant down with our government, because they don't like the way that our government, which was duly elected, is handling business. Now, I'd say, that's not the big issue. But the big issue in relation to that is that they are doing that unbeknownst to many of them. Some of them do know, and some of them are paid directly by these foreign agents, that they are doing harm to our nation by promoting things that are destroying and disintegrating our nation internally. And this is what needs to be talked about, because they don't have to have open lines of communication together to be working together, because they're all working to the same end goal. They want to destroy our country from inside. You think that all of these socialists and communists have exactly the same way of thought, exactly the same thoughts on different subjects? No, but they know the general ideology, and they're all working together on it. It's one of the big issues that you see with the Democrat Party right now, especially the further extremities on the left. And honestly, it's probably pretty much all of the Democrat Party right now, where if you're a Democrat, if you've got to compete for who's more liberal, it's like when you do the game of competing against who's more poor, if you've ever seen the jokes that comedians do about that, This is exactly what we're running into. You've got these groups of people who their ideology is so far out that if you do agree with them, but you disagree with them on one small thing, they're going to kick you out and tell you you're not one of them, you're not this, you're not that. And that's why you see these groups like the No Kings protests, because they don't want to push them out of their specified cliques. They want to bring them all together to unite under one cause, because they know that if they started to actually engage, they would see that there are differences in between them, and they might not actually want to work together. That's why they unite under hate. That's why they unite against Trump. That's why they're all collaborating together to do devious things that are deleterious to our nation's fabric. And we need to understand that that's what's going on. Let's hit some of these comments here. Let's see. The two people have to work, not to be afraid, not to afford a house. Okay, they tell, what's that say? They tell Danes and Swedens and Norwegians. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so some people claim that there are socialist countries in Europe, okay, and it's not true. None of those countries are socialist, right? And then they'll say, oh, well, social democrats and this and that. You're socialist. Stop playing in my face. There's no difference. You've already said it, right? Like, you can't put a prefix on socialist or a prefix on communist to sweeten the pot. It's still poison. You know what I'm saying? If there's water with some poo in it, I don't want to drink the water with the poo in it if you pour more water in it to dilute it more. It's still poo in the water. Like, what are you talking about? Like, don't put makeup on the pig. What they say? Don't put lipstick on the pig, you know? And then tell me that, it's crazy. It's crazy. But this is what people do, because they really want to convince you, however that they can, that they are the ones that are so right, that they are so righteous. And this is where we are right now. This is where we are. So now we've got these people, Code Pink, and these other communist affiliated groups from the United States who have chartered planes to go to Cuba, who have chartered boats to go to Cuba, to go take these so-called aid supplies down to the Cuban government, not to the Cuban people. Let me be very clear about that. Not to the Cuban people who deserve it, but directly to the government. That's a problem. Like, the government is oppressing the people. Like, why are you not listening? So people will say, oh, well, there's an embargo between Cuba and the United States of America. Yeah, there is. But there's not a complete embargo on the island. Like, there's not what you would call an encirclement that prevents anybody from trading with them or anybody from going in. They still do business with China. They've been getting oil from Venezuela for decades. Like, if they had a real, true, complete encirclement embargo, they wouldn't have been getting any of that. So you explain to me how the U.S. is the one that's the cause of what is going on in Cuba. And the fact of the matter is y'all just mad that we won't put the money into Cuba because they're a regime that wishes us harm. Like, who's stupid? Are we going over there to give North Korea and Kim Jong-un some money and investment into North Korea? When he talking about he want to kill us up and blow us up and stuff like that? Maybe now he'll come to heel, because he's been singing some real nice tunes, okay, now that Trump's back in office. So I think he might actually come into the fold. That would be like the coup of our lifetime if North Korea actually started to turn its act around. That would be amazing, beyond amazing. But I'm not going to get my hopes up, right? But I do know he is very concerned about the way Trump's been moving and doesn't want Trump to flex on him, which takes you into what's going on in South Korea and the upswing of the communists that are aided by the Chinese that have inserted themselves in South Korea right now. So China is doing everything that they can to literally whittle away the rest of the world until they can gain complete and total, utter dominance. That's why they're having birthing tourism in Africa. That's why they're doing it also in the US and stuff like that, paying people to have their babies and stuff like that to make the world a little more Chinese. Okay, or in Africa, where they're just acting like they care about these women, having kids with them and then taking off. So now you got a whole bunch of mutt babies over there. So this is a serious problem. But people aren't paying attention to their whole scheme. When a nation state tells you that they want to take over the world and they are one of the top 3 major powers in the world, you better be paying real close attention. Real close attention. And the fact of the matter is, people don't understand how terribly the Chinese do their own people. And that's something that we really need to have a conversation about at some point with these people, because they clearly have no clue. So real quick, hit the like button, hit the share button. It doesn't cost you nothing. Share this out there and get it out to more people. Hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button. And if you're on the radio, please make sure that you follow me on the Marcus C. Williams YouTube channel. You'll find me online and on whatever other social media platforms you are. So yeah, let's jump into it. We got a couple more comments here. What we got? Biden would have used the term competition when talking about China. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. A play on language, you know. So it's a play on language. They do this very often, and they try to make concepts in your mind. Really what it is the play on words, and the way that phrasing is really a type of brainwashing that we never really get to talk about. But what it does is it cultivates your mind to think in a very specified context, so that you don't think outside of that realm. So that way they can really lead you by your nose of what you should think. And that's a serious, serious issue. Let's see, let's see what else. We got a couple more comments. Let's see. Sorry, guys. A lot of these comments are in there. Hey, I see you there. And anybody, if you just want to drop some comments, all the comments help a lot. You know, socialism with Chinese characteristics is very, very, very telling of the direction that we're going. So I want to take 2 seconds and I want to talk about that. Then we'll move into a different topic. But real quick, you are listening to The Divide. We are here in your ear. This is The Divide with Marcus C. Williams. We are on WRFZ 106.3 radio. And if you guys want to support the station, please go to Patreon. We're looking for some people to sponsor the radio station. Station's looking for more supporters because we really are supported by viewers like you. So do go to Patreon and Rochester Free Radio and sponsor or do what you can. And if you're online, you can support the show either side right here or down below. Okay, depending on which orientation you're in, you'll see it differently. But yeah, so support. Now, talking about the socialism and which is going on in China. Right now, we have Xi Jinping, who is in power over there, who's essentially consolidated almost all power in the whole country, right? He's constantly getting rid of and killing off people and stuff like that, and nobody ever talks about it. And that's a serious problem, because right now, they're doing a lot of terrible stuff to people like the Uyghurs, or however you pronounce their name, okay, which are the Muslims from the Northwest, right? Like they're using sexual assault and rape as a weapon against them. They're forcing them into internment camps that they're calling re-education camps. Okay. They're organ harvesting them and stuff like that. Okay. Now, you can take it for what you want because you might be a different religion or whatever. That's real still evil. You know, like that's wrong. That stuff is just plain wrong. I think that the majority of us with any type of concept of humanity believe that, you know. And then you look at what's being done to the people that do the, what is it called, Falun Gong or Falun Dafa. Okay, those people are nice people, really good, solid people, and China's trying to eradicate them, and they've been doing everything that they can to make their lives a living hell. And they've put them in internment camps, forced labor camps. They consistently harvest their organs. They torture them. They torture their family members. It's really bad, you know? And then you see all of this different stuff online about how China's so great and look what they've got and look what they're doing. Except people work 6 days a week, and a lot of times don't even get their pay. Like, are you watching the stuff that's coming out from China about that? No. Because that doesn't fit the narrative that you're trying to cultivate. Are you watching the stuff where they put nets outside of the factories so that people try to kill themselves by jumping out the window, that they land in the net, you know? Like, it's real serious over there. And that doesn't even go into talking about the social credit score. And if you say something that the government doesn't like, or if your dog poos on the ground and you don't clean it up or whatever, they'll deduct your social credit score and you could end up homeless on the street, which there are a lot of people with low social credit scores that are homeless on the street just because of their social credit score, not because of their unwillingness to work, not because they're not smart, but because they've said something that the government didn't like, or they did something that the government deemed impermissible, or something like that. And that is exactly what it's like to be under a dystopian, totalitarian, authoritarian government like these communist regimes. And people don't understand that. In communism, the only people that thrive are at the top. Everybody else is suffering, and suffering bad, largely equally. That's the only thing that's equal in communism, is a lot of the suffering. So let's go on to some other aspects of what's going on. Hit that like button, hit the share button. Now, as we're talking about this China issue, let's take it back to Iran and then bring it full circle back in the Western Hemisphere. The Iranian conflict today, well, last night, I should say, Trump said, listen, Iran, either you come to the table or we're blowing up all of your energy generation facilities. So all your electricity, everything, ain't nothing going to work. You're going to flick a light switch and that bad boy ain't going to come on nowhere in your whole country. I said, man, Trump is a bad man. You know what I'm saying? And I believe him too. I believe that he meant that. So thus far in this engagement, they've not really attacked any of the energy facilities or energy generation facilities. Israel has attacked some of the oil and natural gas places. They're doing their own thing. I'm not very happy about that. That's a whole separate conversation for another time. But the U.S. has avoided hitting any of their energy infrastructure, because eventually what the goal of the United States is for the people of Iran to replace the government that is in there now. But the government is so oppressive. The other day, the guy that was the head of the police, he said, if you come outside acting raw, we're going to put you down in a plastic bag. I said, oh, man. I said, that's real raw. And he said, listen, that's how we roll over here. Now, mind you, a lot of people forget that just a couple of months ago, and it's crazy because Iran hasn't disputed this. I would think that they would have disputed this if it wasn't so true. They said that they killed over 30,000 protesters in Iran just a couple of weeks ago, before this whole engagement started. I think we're on week 4 now, maybe. But before this started, that was what they were doing. They killed like 30,000 people. Like, that's crazy. That's a lot of people. How many people is 30,000? I don't know. Most cases, half a stadium, depending on how big your stadium is, a third of a stadium. Like, a lot of people. Like, how many people do you know? A couple hundred. They killed 30,000 of them. Okay? But yet they say that people like Trump are the problem, and Trump is a king and a despot and stuff like that. It's not true. It's not true. They say things like, oh, well, he's Hitler and stuff like that. And it's not, none of it's true. But when you say these things like this, it exemplifies the really terrible issues of singularly branding a specific topic, right? Or a specific person. So now they're trying to brand Trump all bad and crazy like this, and none of it's true. But it gets people to thinking that, oh, Trump and his supporters, anybody that supports him, are Nazis and this and that and the third. Now, remember, you guys, the Nazis were the National Socialist Workers' Party, okay? They were socialists. They believed in big government. Most Republicans believe in small government, okay? Honestly, if you ask me, if you don't believe in small government, you're not a Republican, because that's what the whole Republican platform has been based off of since its inception. Okay, so that's a very, very important key thing. And people don't want to talk about that at all. So when we see people villainizing the Trump administration and calling them all of these foul, terrible things, and then saying anybody that follows them is just the same and just terrible, that's diminishing these people that actually voted for him or are supporters of him. And you don't know them from a can of paint, but you're trying to tell me that they're worth less than a dog's poo in the middle of the ocean. That's a horrible concept to hold and to believe. Could you imagine how really that impacts these people? They're basically saying that anybody that supports Trump is less than human or should be eradicated. Like we got rid of the Nazis, which they really didn't. That's a whole nother conversation, okay? I got a lot to say about the Nazis and how they're still active, but not in the way that these crazy people try to claim that they are, okay? They don't know nothing about nothing. But they title these people as the Nazis when they're not. They're just not. It's just that simple. And I bring into the thought the use of language when it comes about talking about topics, because I want to talk about what happened in Great Britain yesterday, okay, or last night, overnight. In Britain, these 4 ambulances were set on fire, okay? And apparently the ambulances were Jewish ambulances. So the ambulances were volunteer ambulances for one Jewish community or something like that over there. And then they got set on fire, okay? Now they're saying, oh, it's an act of anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism. And I'm like, you just found out that this happened. Did somebody say that it was because they hated them or something like that? Like, how do you know that it's anti-Semitism? What do you classify as anti-Semitism? Because when you say something that they don't like, it's anti-Semitism, but this is an act of setting some stuff on fire and destroying it. So how can you equate something that somebody said to an action that's that serious as the same thing? And again, this is about the cultivation in the minds of people of how they think. This is why words matter. This is why all of this stuff is very, very important. Drop a comment, hit the like button, and share this. So this is very, very important. What we see right now with that destruction of I believe it was 4 ambulances. I'm pretty sure it's 4, all were completely, if you looked at the pictures, it looked crazy. But apparently they had like some gas cans or something in the ambulances or something. I don't know exactly how they stock ambulances over there. But when I looked at it at first, I was like, did they have oxygen cans in there also or something? Because it looks kind of crazy, you know? So anyway, these, I guess you'd say what? Ambulances, we'll just call them ambulances because that's what they are. These ambulances that were for the Jewish people got destroyed. Well, you're saying to me that that's anti-Semitism. And here's what I say to you. Is it? Okay. But what else is it about that, right? What is it about, really? Because you're just labeling it anti-Semitism. That's like a cop-out. So nobody looks into it, so nobody talks about it. Who's out here blowing up ambulances, right? Like there's much easier ways to do an act of terror or fear or hatred or something like that. To blow up ambulances seems very personal or calculated. And if it's very personal or calculated, I think that that's something that we need to have a real talk about. But the second that it gets labeled as anti-Semitism, all of that other stuff goes out the window. So nobody's thinking about, well, why did they plan to do that? Or what was the result that they were looking for to do that for? Because again, they could have like set something else on fire. They could have like done some other stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like ambulances seems very, very specific. It seems like it was either targeted because it was extremely intentional because they had other thoughts behind the matter, or because it was a personal issue that they had. How do we know? How will we know? We won't know because it's already been wrapped up in the concept of the fact that they're calling it anti-Semitism. So you'll never hear anything else about it. They'll never say, oh, well, this is why they did it. They'll never say, oh, well, this person had an issue with this person. They'll never say any of that. You'll never hear any of that, even if it comes out. It won't be on the news. It won't be broadcast. It won't be talked about. And that stops us from preventing other malicious actors that might try to do something similar somewhere else. Like we need to understand why it happened. Was it just they decided it's a Tuesday, let me go do this? You know, well, it's a Sunday, but you know what I mean. Maybe it was a Saturday. How does the time work on the time plane over there. I don't know. They're like hours ahead or behind us. I think it's behind. It doesn't matter. But yeah. So this is real serious. Real serious. But again, when you limit the concept and you put it and force it into one specific framing, then you can't think outside of that box. And that's a serious issue. So we're real close right now, and we'll move forward from that topic. We'll move forward back to Iran for a second. For the next 5 days, there's going to be, allegedly, according to Trump, a cessation of hostilities. Cessation, yeah. Cessation of hostilities. So they're not going to be dropping any more bombs on them or anything like that, allegedly. I don't know the full details, but that's what was said. So we'll find out soon. You know, Israel doesn't care. Israel do what they want to do anyway. Okay, we've seen that so many times before. Okay, they just blow up whoever, whenever, they don't care. So I doubt that they'll have any part of this ceasefire. Honestly, I think they've been undermining the U.S. interests this whole time during this whole engagement, because every time the U.S. is trying to do something, like the U.S. was trying to protect certain parts of the administration over there or people affiliated with the administration over there, so that if there was a takeover of the country or a transition of power, it wouldn't be so chaotic and we wouldn't risk Iran falling and fracturing, which could be even more dangerous for the whole world, more or less the United States. And we need to have that conversation, because Israel just blew them all up all at once. Okay? Because they said, we do what we want to because we're Israel. And I'm like, well, that was against the interests of what President Trump wanted, and it's against the interests of the United States of America. So what are we really doing here? You know? So with this new cessation of hostilities, I don't think that Israel will uphold their part of it, which they should, but I highly doubt it. I don't see any reason why they would. That's not the way that they operate. So we need to be on the lookout for that, because they might try to sabotage this timing of negotiations that Trump is having with Iran, and that might cause more problems. So if you see some stuff jump off in the next couple of days during this brief interlude, then you guarantee you that it's got to do with Israel. So speaking back to Great Britain, did you guys hear that allegedly Iran sent an ICBM to Diego Garcia base, which is in over by the Indian Ocean, right? Which is also over by where we blew up one of their submarines, which was in the Indian Ocean. I don't know how close it was to Diego Garcia, but that'll be very interesting, you know? So when we talk about that, where'd that missile come from? I'm trying to find out. Apparently this happened a couple of days ago. They didn't tell anybody. Okay, they said it happened on the 17th, I believe, or it might have been the 15th, and they didn't tell anybody. Why didn't they tell anybody? How come we didn't know about this, right? Like a ICBM launched all the way over there. Like, the Indian Ocean is not close. Diego Garcia is not close to Iran. That's pretty far away. Like, how come we didn't know about it when it happened? Like, that you would think would be on all the news channels, or at least one of them, and it was on none of them. So where did that missile really come from? Did the whole thing really shake out that way? What really happened? Because there's some holes in this story, and I got a lot of questions in relation to it. But, you know, don't ask questions, because that might be too much like right. So Iran shot a ICBM, allegedly. And I'm questioning, did they shoot an ICBM at all? Like, you mean you shot an ICBM all the way over there and nobody stopped it until it got all the way over there? We didn't know nothing about it. You understand? The whole thing sounds mega sketchy and mega fishy. Mega sketchy and mega fishy. And I don't know where, who, or what happened, or who shot it, or where it came from. Might have even came off of that boat that we sunk. You know? I don't know. But it doesn't seem like something like that would come from the mainland and be an actual ICBM launch from the mainland. So we need to have some serious conversations on that, and we need to sit around the table and actually talk about this. Let's see. Somebody says it was on Fox News, typical biased news, not cover the news? Okay, so I guess they're saying the only ones that covered it was Fox News. Yeah, so that's really interesting. It's other places now, but if Fox was the first one to say that it was a thing, it's a very possible. Somebody said it's all AI, it's all Hollywood. You know, some of it is, but I don't think that that is. I think that that is something else that's going on there. So that's really, really questionable. Somebody says Pete Hegseth says those missiles are cheap and easily available. Shoot, I mean, if intercontinental ballistic missiles are cheap and readily available, that's crazy, bro. Because I could use some of them. You know what I'm saying? I could use some of them if they're cheap and abundant like that. You know, I could use some of them. And I joke, but also I'm serious. Like, what do you mean they're cheap and widely available? You sound crazy. Ain't no way. You know how much stuff goes into ICBM? That sounds outrageous. So, but right now, speaking on Pete Hegseth and stuff like that, and the Department of War, they've just asked for another $200 billion. $200 billion. They said, oh, well, we're going to use it for what's going on in Iran and to rebuild our stockpile. Okay, I'm with you rebuilding the stockpile. I'm not with you using this funding for Iran. You're going to have to sell it to me. And you can't sell it to me and say, oh, well, it's for security. I'm not trying to hear any of that. I want to know what the United States of America is actually going to gain. Don't sell me anything on security, because that's a lie that you always sell me. It's about security. No, I want some resources. What's Iran giving up? Tell Iran run its pockets if we're going to just give you $200 billion. Don't play in my face. When that money ever going to come back to the American people? Never. Okay? So make it make sense. Make it make sense. Where's that money going to come from? Okay, more from taxpayers' money. So they're trying to put that in Congress right now. I don't think that it'll pass. It might get out of the House of Representatives by a very thin margin, but I don't think it'll pass the Senate. So again, this is the issue of Congress. Congress does what it wants, when it wants, what it feels like, when it feels like. And right now, I agree, honestly. I don't support another 200 billion, because it'll be 500 billion by the end of the week, I bet. 200 billion for whatever's going on over there. I know war costs money. War costs a lot of money, but this isn't a war, right? This is an armed conflict, right? A policing action, right? So you don't need all that extra money for a policing action or an armed conflict. So sell it to me straight. Like, what is really going on over there? Okay, what do you really need, and how long is it really projected for you to take? Because here we are at 4 weeks. It looks like it's climbing down and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know that I believe that. I don't think I have a real reason to believe that. And I think all of us need to be very honest about that. Trump says, oh, well, it's close to over. What does close to over mean? What exactly is the goal? Are you trying to tear down all of their infrastructure so they can't do anything with it? Are you going to salt the earth so that nothing ever grows again? Are you trying to get rid of everybody that's a leader, down from the police chief all the way up to the Ayatollah? Like, what are the actual goals here? Like, they're like, oh, well, we want to hobble the regime and this, that, and the third. It sounds to me, when it comes out of Trump's mouth, Trump only wants to limitedly remove some people from the regime itself. But he doesn't want all this extra nonsense that's going on, because he knows, just like Venezuela, there needs to be a direct transition of power and a secession. That's the best way to stay in control of these countries. So if we don't have something like that, that's going to be a bit of an issue. Somebody said they should just bomb their power grid and the war is over. Is it though? Is it over if we bomb their power grid? Like, I'm not opposed to that, but honestly, I think that it won't help the way that we really want to. Again, we spoke earlier about the fact that certain instances will scatter the Iranian whole state. Like, it'll be broken up into different factions, which it already sounds like somewhat is happening already. So we need to be very much so on the lookout for that, because that's a problem and a real thing that we need to look at. Let's see. We got another comment. 2 missiles launched. One fell apart from the other. The other one was shot down, according to the story. So this is about the missiles that were going to hit Diego Garcia that Iran fired, right? But it's interesting that Iran is aiming at these British Navy bases when we've got an issue. I shouldn't say Navy because it's not just Navy, it's Air Force and other stuff there as well. But this is happening right after the British said, no, we're not going to let you use our spaces, our forts, or anything to launch attacks or whatever on Iran. That's crazy. They went so far as talking about they're selling the Diego Garcia Island to China. Like, what is going on here? Like, what even are we doing? And then you see how sold out Ireland, not Ireland, but England, the greater whole of England is sold out to them already. Look, China just built the largest embassy, hundreds and hundreds of rooms. Why do you need an embassy that big? Hundreds and hundreds of rooms, okay, just a couple of streets away from the whole offices of all the magistrates, the PMs, the prime ministers and stuff like that, you know, like parliament. Like, what are we doing? And then underneath that runs a deep data cable. And the giant data cable is basically one of the ones that is used to transmit data across our nation. But because of where it's placed, it's one of the nodes that a lot of secret information gets transferred through. So now China's going to have access to all of this information because you know that they're going to splice that wire. Okay, you know they're going to tap into it. Like, who's foolish? Like, we're not that stupid to believe that China won't do that. Come on now. But all of a sudden, England's just going to go with that? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Something's up there. They're being paid off, they're already bought off, or they're so far in the pocket of China that they can't get their head out to breathe. It's a serious issue. And I don't know if the other lady on the opposing side, on the conservative side, what's her name? The Cumberbatch or something? What's that lady's name? Let's see. Conservative leader, England. Let's find out right now. What's her name? Let's see. Let's see. What's the conservative leader of England? It is Cammy Badenoch. I probably said that pretty bad, but that's who it is, okay? And she seems all right. She seems pretty witty. Some melanated lady, okay? She seems pretty on the cap of stuff. She might be the next prime minister, but I think she's too dark to be the next prime minister, so that probably won't happen. All of these other Indian people over there that are Muslims are getting in there, and all these same people that are Muslims are getting in there. You know, they don't have the sheiks getting in there. And there's this guy that's a sheik over there. Okay, the sheiks are these people that are a different religion. Go check them out. But they're very much against the Muslims. They've been fighting them out for, I don't know, a couple hundred years, you know, over there in the, what do you call that? I guess, is that West Asia? I guess, yeah. West Asia and parts of India and stuff like that. So it's really important to understand what's going on in England. Again, this goes back to geopolitics and how the people that look at these one little issues don't see or pay attention to enough of what else is going on. It's a real serious issue. Somebody says also British is practicing speech policing, sad place these days. Yeah, it's not just speech policing. It's more than that. They've got all types of crazy things going on there. And the surveillance is mad and everything. It's real bad. They got more cameras than anything in the universe, and they're watching you at all times, know where you are, all of this craziness. It's real bad. So it's clear that they want to be just like China. They baby China right now, okay? China is trying to institute global socialism. Exactly that. That's what we were just talking about a little while ago. Thank you for joining the conversation. Hit the like button and the share. So this is exactly what we're talking about. It's all these people are in it together, really. The enemies of the United States, which we have a lot of big players that are enemies of the United States. Some nations that could be hostile to us are more fearful of us than hostile to us because they know that they can benefit, you know? So some of it's fear, but most of it is benefit, you know? The people in power can benefit. Somebody said there isn't the nuclear option, which is dropping a bomb on the capital of Iran. So no, that would not be a good option. Okay. One, I fully support turning most of the Middle East to glass. That's number one. But dropping a bomb on Persia, that's a bad idea. And I'll tell you why. Because the vast majority of the people in relation to Persia are not these type of Muslims that we see or we consider the Saracens, which are the sand people. It's not those type of people. Like Persia, Iran, where it is right now, like they were never a part of all of that. Like Islam was forced on them. Okay. So that's a real serious issue. Honestly, it's largely to do with Jimmy Carter. Okay. Somehow it goes back. It's always either Jimmy Carter or France, it seems, you know, like one of the two. It seems to trace back to them a lot. So Jimmy Carter should have backed Shaw, but he never did. When the Shaw took power, they should have supplied them with aid and arms, and they did none of that. And that's why we had to collapse and the IRGC take over, the Islamic National Guard Corps, okay, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And that's why they took over, because they didn't support their man. Like, that was crazy. You know, that was wicked work, because the Ayatollah was like, oh, well, I'll be a little bit moderate if I get in there. So I'll get in there and you won't have to worry. And then he got in there and he flipped the script on us for the next 50 years. You know, like, who's stupid? Jimmy Carter. Okay. Like, serious issue. A serious issue. Somebody said, what is this about somebody in Tennessee? I don't know what you're talking about. You got to give me more information. So we are at the point where all of these people that are saying things like drop a nuke on Tehran and stuff like that aren't thinking of the bigger picture. We drop a nuke on them and what? And what? We kill up a whole bunch of people that are innocents, that are just trying to live their life under this repressive regime. We make a whole bunch of people mad and turn all the people that died into martyrs, create a whole bunch of new enemies so that they can go out and try to get us back later. You know, I figure it like this. If somebody dropped a bomb on my house and it's me, my grandma in a wheelchair, my two-legged dog, and my goldfish, I'm going to be mad at them forever. I'm going to do everything that I can do to get back at them. Like, are you crazy? So when we say we're going to nuke somebody, we need to be very, very, very direct, succinct, and focused. Can't just drop a nuke on Iran. That would be one of the worst possible things that you could do. However, speaking of Iran and nukes, Iran shot a missile at one of Israel's nuclear production sites, where they're making bombs that, of course, Israel doesn't make nuclear bombs, that they have the nuclear bombs that we know they have at least 47, but, you know, they don't have those because they don't talk about it. But if we know that they've got 47, they probably got 247, you know. So somebody says, but you get rid of the main Iranian leadership. So we have no real reason to believe that anybody in the main Iranian leadership is even in existence anymore. We took out 40 of their top people. A couple of them were the preceding people. We took out the majority of the Islamic ruling council. There's like nobody out there. There's like the one guy that was the janitor in the in their state office that's left right now. And I laugh and I joke, you know, but honestly, it's really serious. It is very slim pickings over there. Israel blew up the police dude the other day, the head of the national police, and all types of stuff. There is like almost nobody left. It's really, really problematic, because when it comes to that, we need to plan a succession of power, and we don't really have anybody in there to place there. So we need to be very much so thinking of that. Somebody said cutting off the head of the snake. So it's already cut off. It's already cut off, but I'd say it's less like the head of a snake And more like the head of a basilisk, when you cut the head of it off, it just kind of grows back. A basilisk is multiple snake heads on it, if you don't know. I guess you could have some basilisks that are different, but that's a general concept. So this is a serious issue, and we have to be very, very, very moderate in our approach to this, because if we don't, it's going to get real, real ugly and bad. And honestly, we need to figure out how to rein Israel in, because they're doing too much. And that's a fact. It is what it is, you know? And we need to understand that if we're going to stabilize this nation, it will bring us great bounty as a country, which goes back to the first conversation we were having here, where people don't see how all the other things impact us and come back to us, right? So this is a good thing for us. If we're able to take over the Strait of Hormuz, I say we rename it the Strait of America. I'm joking. They probably never go for that. I'm also not joking. I'm really not. If you know me and you follow me sometimes, I'm very serious about when we put troops on the ground. I don't believe we should put any troops on the ground anywhere unless we're taking territory and resources and we're incorporating it into the United States of America. If we're not doing that, we ain't got no business. That's where I stand full and wholeheartedly. Okay, that's why I don't like most armed conflicts and engagements across the place, you know, because what are we getting out of it at the end of the day? But if I ran out of the way, maybe we can get control of their oil. That would be awesome. I wish. Maybe we can get control of the Strait of Hormuz and the shipping traffic that's going through there. That would be awesome. That would benefit the United States so much, because it would make us an even bigger star on the world stage. We'd have more power as a nation. Well, I wouldn't be happy that we wouldn't get a lot of money as individual citizens from it, and we're probably not going to incorporate it into our territory as a country. But I heard that we're going after some of these islands and we might take them, and we just deployed like 2 contingents of Marines over there. The most recent one that we just launched a couple days ago was like 2,200 guys. So that'd be interesting to see what happens. And I don't want us to take anything that we're not keeping. Stop taking stuff and not keeping it. You know, like, it's real serious. Somebody said the royal family, the Shah, is ready to take over with our help. No, they're not. No, they're not. The son of the Shah said that he don't want none. He said, I would be the transitionary person in there, but I don't want to really be in there. So then who's going to be in there after him, right? And who's to say that that's going to work out? Because look at how it worked out last time. Didn't work out so well. So I'm not in a rush to do that either. I'm really not in a rush for that. So we really have to be thinking about this very carefully and very methodically, because it's very important. Right now, with the continued attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, which has a lot of the oil traffic that comes out of the Middle East, it's a problem. You can't get ships in there. You can't get ships out there. Sometimes if you put a flag up of the Chinese, you might be able to get a ship in or a ship out, but it's really causing problems. And now they won't insure any of the ships. Lloyd's of London, which insures the ships, you know, from England, from London, the center of London, you know, the city of London, which is its own free place and not actually part of the Great Britain. That's a whole nother crazy conversation. It's a banking city, one of the independent banking cities in the world. Crazy madness. Go look into that. That's something to look into. Hit the like, hit the share while you're out there. Drop some thumbs up and put some comments up. I'll try to pop your comment on the screen as we're going through some of this. Now, as we have this conversation about what's going on and how it might benefit the U.S., there are a lot of people that are very concerned with what's going on over there. And they're like, we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't. Are we? Are we there right now? We are there right now, right? So you think you can just pull out, right? You're just going to go off half-cocked, because that's what you're trying to do, right? Like, that's going to cause even more problems if we don't complete the job. We got to finish the job on this situation. It's very, very serious. And it's really problematic. So let's talk about what's going on in the U.S. for a second. Let's come back stateside. Let's talk about the SAVE Act for a moment, right? We all know that the SAVE Act is trying to get put through in the Senate or whatever, and they're not really trying to do it or whatnot. And that's its own problem, right? Now, to try to sweeten the deal and make it go through, that they're trying to put in there that there will be no more child genital mutilation. There will be no more boys and girls sports and stuff like that. I think that's good. I don't know that it should be attached to that, but that would be a major piece of legislation if we can get that passed. Now, in order for the Democrats to pass it, they say we got to do all of these crazy things and pull back ICE. I don't think that I agree with them quite very much on that. I do think that there is an overexpansion of government policing, and that is a problem. I don't know that this is the answer, but I know one thing for sure isn't the answer. Stopping this, I should say, keeping up this shutdown that's going on right now is definitely not the answer to solving what they want. Now, they believe that it is, that they can pressure the Republicans into doing it because the TSA is shut down, the CISA is shut down, CISA, the Central Intelligence, what is it? Center for Intelligence, something. Anyway, it's one of our cyber intelligence agencies. So them and FEMA, which we've got this giant 2 storms that just hit Hawaii, so we need FEMA. We got other stuff going on in the southeast. We need FEMA. Like these people. And it's not just those, it's other groups that have been shut down. The Coast Guard, like the Coast Guard isn't getting paid, like the Department of Commerce isn't getting paid. And all of these Democrats are like, yeah, yay, yay, yay. You're messing up, y'all. Like, what are you doing? Like, is this what we're doing? Like, no, we should not be doing this. Like, because you want to get your way, because you're acting like a spoiled brat, you know, because you want ICE to take the masks off of their faces or whatever the case is, bull jive. How about you tell your people stop wearing masks? How about you tell all these domestic terrorists stop wearing masks? I ain't never seen them tell none of these people to stop wearing masks. When COVID came in, they want everybody to wear a mask. I was always against it for multiple reasons, but more than anything, because everybody running around looking like a bunch of banditos, looking like highwaymen, like they about to jack somebody, and they still out here dressed like that. Y'all did this. And you telling ICE to take off their mask? Maybe I'd be with you if you took off yours. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't start this. They got that tactic from you. But can we have that conversation? No, of course we can't have that conversation, because that's an honest and earnest conversation. And it's too much like right. You know, nobody wants to have that type of conversation. Somebody said, look up over 100,000 not getting paid for working for DHS. Yeah, I know. DHS is crazy there too. So these are all the different groups that I just named are all under DHS. But you know who's paid in full? ICE. Because that was part of the big, beautiful bill. It wasn't part of this. So the fact that they're holding this up right now, dick move, right? It's borderline treason. It's a whole dick move. Like, it's not even associated with ICE, but you're trying to hold the rest of the nation hostage and our Department of Homeland Security hostage so that you can get what you want because you're spoiled little brats. That's what the Democrats are acting like. Spoiled little brats that can't get their way, so they're going to give everybody else a hard time until they get what they want. They're going to throw a whole tantrum in the store and rip stuff off the shelves until they get their way so that people make sure that they stop doing what they're doing. If it was up to me, we wouldn't be negotiating with them terrorists because they are terrorists as far as I'm concerned. Like, you want something done with ICE? I got you. I understand you. I hear you. I don't agree with you necessarily, but I hear you and I understand you. But when you drag all these other agencies and groups into it because you're mad at ICE, you are the problem. And it's not complicated for anybody to see that. But again, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, the very, very beginning of how everybody's all in their emotions and their feelings and their moral self-righteousness and moral justifications for everything. It's trash. Like, we got a whole bunch of big behind babies in the U.S. Somebody need to take off their belt and start whooping some behind. Like, that's really what needs to be done. Some discipline needs to be reinstilled in these individuals. Like, it's a pain. And I have no affinity for Congress. All, was it 451 of them or whatever, however many people it's in there now. Okay, I can't even deal. I don't want none. I'd throw most of them out. Start over. You know, it's a problem. Let's see. Got another comment here. Let's see. Somebody said they called their senator office not to get a person, only to leave a message. and they're stopping the shutdown for the SAVE Act. That's what you can do, people. You can call your senator or your state senator or your state congressman. You usually have a couple of congress people in your state. You usually have one for your specific district, but you got a few in the state. And if you're talking about the federal Senate, you've usually got two, your junior and your senior. Okay. Mine is Chuck Schumer, who's a piece of excrement, and then Gillibrand, okay, who's just about as bad as he is. And Chuck Schumer came out the other day, speaking of the SAVE Act, Chuck Schumer came out and he said, I don't support the SAVE Act because it's going to allow ICE to kick tens of millions off of the voter rolls. You said, what? It's going to allow ICE to kick off tens of millions off the voter rolls? But you've been telling me for the last couple of years, there are no illegal aliens or foreigners on the voter rolls. Like, how you get like that? How you going to tell me that? Now you're telling me that it is? Like, and nobody put this up on the news. Did you guys see that on the news anywhere? Like, no, it wasn't even on. That should be the only thing that's played on the news right now. That needs to be on the news 24/7. Like it's crazy. Like that he actually said that. But by saying that, keeping it in line with the SAVE Act, right? Most people want voter ID. But see, it's not even really about voter ID, is it? It's about protecting our elections. That's what it's really about. People are concerned that we don't actually have secure elections. I'm concerned. I'm very active politically where I am in the city of Rochester. I am very concerned that the elections are not secure. We've seen a whole bunch of malfeasance and witch trickery over the last couple of years. Okay, it's been very, very, very unique, to say it mildly. But these are the problems that we have here, and we need to start talking about them. Trump went down to Maricopa County, got some of the stuff there. I haven't heard anything back about what's going on down there. Went down to Fulton County in Georgia. I haven't heard anything about what happened down there. Now I heard that the sheriff that's running for governor in California picked up some ballots to check out the ballots from the last year's election, because apparently there were some discrepancies and concerns for election integrity over there in part of California. But I mean, most people are concerned and don't necessarily believe that the elections are secure. So this is a very important, crucial bill. I don't necessarily like pushing all the elections more so to the federal level. Again, I'm a small government person, but it's very clear that places like I live in New York State are super trash. They've got like 9 million days of voting. You can vote basically all year long. They got it where you can mail in ballots. The ballots can come in after the election. Okay. They got it where we've got all types of dead people on the voter rolls. They didn't want to give the voter rolls to the federal government. So we got nipped for that. That was a whole problem a couple months ago, if you remember that. And it's caused us all of these issues because New York State doesn't take voter integrity seriously, because they're probably cheating. They're most likely cheating in New York State. I can't talk about your state because I don't live there, but I know the shenanigans and stuff that's been happening here. Okay. And if you look at places like Arizona with the ballot harvesting, or Pennsylvania with the ballot harvesting and stuff like that, a lot of really shady stuff. I don't know if you saw the thing the other day. I saw somebody going, and I believe it was James O'Keefe, it was James O'Keefe and one of his people from his organization. They were going around and they were investigating the homeless people in California and how they were giving them money to sign up to vote and to sign up for their petition that they were passing around. That's crazy. Like, that's really, really crazy. And they were putting fake addresses and stuff on there, or whatever the case. The whole thing is crazy. Most of the homeless people didn't know what they were signing and all types of stuff. It's bananas. It's bananas. But this is how the enemy of America works internally, because it's all about them staying in power. It's not about the actual American people. And that is a disservice to every single last one of us. Let's see. We got a couple of comments here. The Democrats realizing in California that they're being screwed over, and they're now looking to flip red. Well, I don't want them necessarily to change parties, but I'd like them to vote different. I don't want them to bring their lefty ideology over to the right. Like, we don't want that. We don't need none of that. But if they want to vote for Republicans, definitely do that. You know, it's very, very important. So what we got is we got a whole bunch of people running around in our country that are concerned about our elections. Like 86% of the American people want voter ID. Why is this being held up? And I could talk about how Thune is trash and garbage. I'm not a fan. Okay. Never been a fan. Wasn't a fan of him when they would put him up for the for the lead of the for the lead in Congress. I'm not a fan of him at all. Okay. I think that he's doing a grave disservice to the American people. I really, really do. And now when I say I think, I don't think, I absolutely know. I'm just trying to soften it a little bit. Okay. Because what's going on is wrong. What's happening is wrong. And if you guys want to support the show, please hit the like button, the share button. That helps a lot. Share it out. It doesn't cost you nothing. You can help out the show by checking out either sides of the screen here or down below, depending on which format you're looking at us on. So if you're on the radio and you want to support the station, please go to patreon.com and Rochester Free Radio. The station is looking for more sponsors and donors because we are sponsored in part by viewers like you or listeners like you, right? Because it's the radio. So, but yeah, back to the task at hand. Right now, we see what's happening inside our nation. We see that people do not believe that the votes are going the way that they should. We see that people are concerned about mail-in ballots. We saw how there were, what was it, tens of thousands of mail-in ballots that were found in a ravine, okay, that came from voting districts that were very red in California, and they were just found in a ravine after the 2020 election. Like, we're never going to talk about that. Or the train in California that had all of those ballots. Like, we're never going to talk about that. Or the train in Pennsylvania that had those weird filled in ballots that were pre-filled in but no names and stuff on them. We're not going to talk about any of that. Now, I'm not going to say that there's any malfeasance there, but I'm going to be like, man, if it looked like poo, it smelled like poo, I'm not going to try to taste it and find out if it tastes like poo. You understand what I'm saying? Like, this is for real. Like, this is the real deal. People are concerned. Right now, there is a case in the Supreme Court right now, okay? Watson versus the Republican National Committee. Committee, okay? And I was listening to the arguments today, the oral arguments, and the guy that's fighting the case because they're trying to get, essentially, if this case is lost, mail-in balloting will be gone. Mail-in balloting will be gone. You'll still probably have absentees, but regular mail-in balloting like they do in New York State and all these other states, it's probably gone. And it's already, the case is off. Listen, I encourage you to go watch it. It's online now. You can listen to it. They've already started. I think today there was 2 hours. I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing so far today. But the oral arguments, the dude was trying to say, yeah, essentially they're trying to defend mail-in ballots, right? He brought up the most stupidest, dumbest stuff to try to defend it. I'm looking at this guy like by the time he get done talking, they're going to get rid of the absentee ballots too. They're going to get rid of not only mail-in ballots, they're going to get rid of absentee ballots. They're going to get rid of multiple day voting because the way that this guy is addressing his premise or his thesis, however you want to say it, is ridiculous. He's like, yeah, when the founders framed the Constitution, they put in voting day and how voting day was supposed to be. Hold on, voting day, bro? Are you sure that's how you want to start your argument for mail-in ballots? Talking about voting day? When you say voting day, that means that if they are voting, it needs to be on that day. So when you say voting day, that automatically precludes any early voting or any ballots being counted after the election. Like, and the Democrats do this. They did it with what was it? Not the Bruin decision. Roe versus Wade. I forget what the one was with Roe versus Wade. If you remember the one that ended up getting Roe versus Wade overturned, drop it in the comments. But they did it with that when that got overturned because that was a states' right issue. It should have never went to the Supreme Court at all. But they figured that if they got it to the Supreme Court, it would get tossed out. And if it got tossed out, then they'd be able to say, oh, they're coming for your abortions. And then they could win. the electorate like that and get their people out to vote. That was a play. And I think that this is a similar play because that guy's got to be a retard. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, where did you go to get your law degree? Out of Cracker Jack box? Or were you high this morning? Like, did you not really think this through? Because when you start off your argument about mail-in ballots and you're trying to reference all these other things like multiple days to vote early voting and absentee ballots and stuff like this, but you're saying that the Constitution and the founders, they started it up for election day, bro. Election day? You didn't think that through very much, or it's intentional, one of the two. So that's something that needs to be talked about. I encourage you, go listen to these Supreme Court cases on this right now. It's going on right now. So you'll see it today, probably some tomorrow, and some more until we get a resolution. I don't know exactly how they do the lineup of the cases in the Supreme Court right now. I know they got a lot going on. But when he was talking about it, a couple of the justices asked him, well, clarify what you mean that essentially when he was trying to say that essentially when somebody hands off their ballot and turns it in, that is intent, right? But they asked for clarity on what he meant by that intent because he was saying, well, where is the justification? What's his name? Clarence Thomas asked this. I believe it was the lady, the one that a lot of people aren't very happy with right now. I can forget her name. It's slipping my mind. I can see her face though. But her, and that was the first start of it. They were asking and they were like, hey man, what is exactly what you're talking about? What do you mean the intent? At what point is the intent? Is it when somebody gets a notary to sign off on the mail-in ballot? Is it when the mail-in ballot is received? What is this whole, what is the acceptance concept? Like, because essentially they're trying to say that mail-in ballots should be able to be collected after the election day, right? As long as they're notarized or formatted before the election day and filled out, you know? And Clarence Thomas was like, well, what if I give it to the head of my HOA? Is that good enough for intent? You know, like and then somebody said, well, then he said later on after Amy Coney Barrett, that's who I was referencing as the other lady. After Amy Coney Barrett spoke for a moment, asked some questions, he said, well, what about if if a Supreme Court justice collected it? Is that enough for you? Is that an intent? Like, you know, like, and the guy was like, well, this and that and the third. Very, very poor case lawyer. I don't know who put him in that case. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe it was a fake. You know, maybe the guy was really trying and he thought that this would work. But the way I'm looking at it, if I'm looking at it as a adjudicator, I'm throwing it all out. You started off the wrong way talking about election day. Yeah, okay, I'm with you 100% election day. 1 day to vote in federal elections, that's all. Sounds good to me. So that let's get rid of all the mail-in balloting. Let's get rid of all of the early voting, okay? Let's get rid of all of that, okay? Like, you know, like that wouldn't get rid of absentee balloting, but the way that he made this sound is that absentee balloting might get thrown out because of, again, the way his argument is. So if they're going to accept his argument as being the definitive argument for that case, and they come back and they adjudicate on this, they might throw out all of that. We might get only 1 day voting again. And God bless, I would love that. I would love that. Single day voting. And then we can make it a national holiday. You know, what's wrong with one more holiday? Even though everybody's supposed to get the time off from their job to be able to go vote or whatever the case is. Let's just make it a national holiday. Well, who says we can't have another national holiday? That'd be all right. I wouldn't be mad at that. Everybody gets a day off to vote. Let's see. We got a couple questions, statements here. Somebody said Schumer said that years ago, but now he's stating different tune like a hypocrite. He's talking about how Schumer is saying that there are foreigners and illegal aliens on our voter rolls now, and that if the SAVE Act goes through, they'll get purged off of the voter rolls. Good. They should all be gone, you know? Like, that's a very serious statement. If you want to be part of the conversation, drop a comment below, hit the thumbs up, get the message out there, hit the share button. It doesn't cost you nothing. And we appreciate you tuning into the show. Now, as we go through a couple of other things, I want to hit a couple of other things before we get out of here. So Germany has a shortage of workers right now, and they're turning to India for their workers, and they're about to import a whole bunch of Indians to Germany. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But at the same time, last year, Germany is like, hey, we're going to improve our military and make it the strongest military in all of Europe. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I don't believe it. I don't trust in no Germany with a strong military. I don't trust no Germany. Not at all. Nope. That has never worked out in the history of Germany. Germany always doing some stuff. But yeah, so no, that's the direction that they're moving right now, is they're talking about bringing all of these Indians in because they don't have enough people to work. I got so many questions there. Like, why don't you have enough people to work? What's going on over there that your whole system and everything is falling to pieces? You know, like, how did that even happen? How did you let it get that far? You know, there's lots of questions. I can tell you exactly what happened in the United States because of poor priority, poor schooling, the continued intent to destroy the family and rip apart the family and encourage people not to have any children and be scared of even living a couple of years because the earth's going to die because of climate change. That's what they told everybody. So they scared everybody not to have kids. They've also made it prohibitively expensive to have children here. And that's a whole nother problem. It shouldn't be expensive to have children. You should be able to have children and be good. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted it like this so people would have less children so that the people in power could have more control and exercise more control over you. Because the less people that there are, the more control that the government can have. That's very simple. And that's also why right now we see the continued expansion of the military police force that is the National Guard on the state levels and the federal policing, which is like ICE on the federal level. Like, we can't overlook that just because we might support some of the things an administration does or some of the candidates that they have. Like, we can't overlook what's being done. Now, if you're on the radio, I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to The Divide with Marcus C. Williams. Have a blessed day. Stand up, speak up, and don't shut up. I'll catch you next week. So if you guys are online with us, I want to finish up this thought because what's happened to our nation is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And it's also happened in many places in the Western world. They're killing people off by the food that they eat, by the sedentary lifestyle that they're implementing, by the lack of being able to be fruitful, right? Like, they are really hemming up the people in our nation and in other Western nations. That's why the birth rates are so low. They've also made it cost prohibitive to have kids and even to barely live. Somebody mentioned earlier, you need two parents, not two parents, but you need two people to really afford to live nowadays, and then you still working to death. So this is very important, but they separated all of the family. They tell people don't get married early. They tell you don't have kids early when you should get married early. Get married early. Go get married early, have lots of kids, okay? That's what you need to do. If you want to bring America back, get married, have lots of kids, marry young. There's also statistics that say that when you get married between the age of 19 and 22, you're more likely to have a relationship that lasts for your whole lifetime, which is really good. That's a really good thing. But they've told people, oh, just live your life, just sow your wild oats, just go out and have fun, just go enjoy being young. No, start a family, be happy, find your person, okay, get married. All of these lies and fairy tales that they've sold people over the last couple of years, and it hasn't been like that all the time. This is something that only started like after the 70s, you know, all that free love and all of that nonsense, okay? Because they wanted to stop coupling. They wanted to stop people from being together and having a tight-knit family, because if you don't have a tight-knit family, that's easier for the government to rule over you. And that's where we are right now. We must restore the family. We must restore faith in our nation. We must turn to the Lord our Father and repent, okay, so that we can restore our nation and restore prosperity to our nation and to our people. We need to rededicate our nation in the name of Jesus Christ, the one true God, okay, because there is only one, that is the triune God, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, you guys, I'll catch you later. Y'all be blessed and be well. Share this out. Hit the link button and hit the heart button and drop some comments because all of that helps a lot. I'll catch you next week. Hit the subscribe and the follow. Y'all be blessed and be well. Remember, stand up, speak up, and don't shut up. Take action.